If you're like me, you grew up watching PBS Kids on your parents' analog TV, but only when the wind didn't blow outside. And if you're not like me, you actually understand SpongeBob references. One of the shows that I watched on PBS Kids was called Reading Rainbow with LeVar Burton. And there was a segment in that show that featured a bunch of kids giving little to no context book reviews. Some of them more than others. They would hold up a book, explain why we should read this book, and sometimes they would tell us what the book was about, sometimes they didn't.
So read Jumanji. I promise you, you won't be among the bored and restless.
And I thought it would be nice to give a bunch of Star Wars book reviews reading rainbow style, with little to no context. So here are my first 5 books for this video. I've read a lot more Star Wars books than these 5. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but we're gonna start off with these 5. And I'll probably make another video with other Star Wars books. I'm also gonna give the books ratings 1 to 5 based on what I feel about them. So here are the books. Reading Rainbow style. So I'll be reviewing a trilogy and then 2 standalone books. So first up we have Queen's Shadow by E.K. Johnston. This is the first book of the trilogy. It came out in 2019 and this book is more about Padme and her selection of handmaidens, how she cultivated the handmaiden program, what they did together, how they switched places all the time. It was decent. It gave a lot of backstory to the story that we already knew, which I think the most interesting part of this book is definitely what the handmaidens went through when Padme was off planet on Tatooine and on Coruscant. Overall, I think this was a decent book. It wasn't too boring, but it also wasn't too entertaining or too surprising. So I would give it a 2.5 out of 5. The next book in that series is called Queen's Peril, and it came out in 2020, so right after the other one. It just continues the story of Padme and then what her handmaidens are doing in the background. Overall, I think this was a little bit more boring than the first book. It wasn't surprising. It didn't really add too much behind the scenes. I like the cover art. It's very nice, but I would give this a 1.5 out of 5. And now we're moving on to the last book of that trilogy called Queen's Hope. And this is the most boring book of the trilogy. So I think that it starts off okay and then it just keeps going down. I think one reason is just because we have a lot of media already on Padme. I also just feel like Padme is a little bit of a less relatable character for me versus many other women in the Star Wars universe. So that's kind of why I found this to be a little bit boring compared to other books that I've read. This book kind of focuses on her handmaidens, but not as much as the previous ones. I think the most interesting part of the story, there are pages that are like little tiny stories of other women. They feel like they're just teasers for another book. Like there's one about Aunt Beru, and those pages are actually really, really good. And I'd much rather have a book about Aunt Beru now than anything else about Padme. So again, I think this is the most boring book of the trilogy, and I would give it a 0.5 out of 5. The next book that I have is actually a script, and it's called Star Wars Dooku Jedi Lost. It came out in 2019, and I hope I'm saying the author's name right, but it's by Cavan Scott. And I thought that this was actually really good. It tells you where he came from. It also tells you more about his background of going through the Jedi. It also gives some background on Ventress and how they met. It's a story within a story, so as the main storyline is continuing, Ventress is learning a lot about Dooku's past through past storytelling. So, story inception here, but I thought it was really good. It reads really quickly because it's a script. So if you know anything about play scripts, you know that they're like line, 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 and it's pretty easy to read. It's a quick read. So I'd actually give this book a 4.5 out of 5. Now this last book is called Star Wars Death Troopers, and it's from the Essential Legends collection. It came out in 2009, and I hope I'm saying this author's name right, but it's by Joe Schreiber or Schreiber. I think that this is probably my favorite Star Wars book that I've read out of the 5 that I've talked about today. I'll just say it right now, it's definitely a 5 out of 5. I thought that it was really interesting. The storyline is original. There's mostly original characters in here, which I really appreciated. It doesn't emphasize or give any backstory on people that we've already seen a million things about. So it's really fun. I think that this is more of a Star Wars book for people who don't know what Star Wars is. It's also kind of gory. If you like horror books, this is going to be a good book for you. If you like Halloween, Halloween's coming up. If you like Halloween and Star Wars, you're going to love this book. You're going to love it so much. Definitely a 5 out of 5 for this. Thanks for watching this video. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me if you've read any of those books that I talked about today. Tell me if you like them, if you hate them. Tell me if my ratings really suck or if they were pretty spot on. Recommend any more Star Wars books for me. I love reading Star Wars books. I like reading, but I love reading Star Wars books. So if you have any more recommendations for me, comment below and I will get to those.